From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez. This is From the South. We start in Venezuela, where authorities have condemned an arson attack in the Orinoco petroleum belt. Oil Minister Manuel Quevedo described the event as an attempt to destabilize the country.
This station guarantees the exports of Venezuelan oil. With these sales, Venezuela buys food, medicines. This is an attack against our people. They want to create a situation in which PDVSA has no profits. Since early in the morning, all workers have helped to extinguish the fire. We are already working very quickly to fix this. We thanked the workers. The Venezuelan right wing has no political proposals, so it's trying to use violence, guided by the U.S.
Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro has participated in a graduation ceremony for international community doctors. The 128 medicine students brings the total number of graduates from the program to nearly 1,500 in the last 6 years. Maduro says he's committed to expanding the capacity to receive students from around the world so that more people can study in Venezuela to become doctors. Meanwhile, people in Venezuela continue to reject foreign aggressions with the campaign Hands Off Venezuela. A group of citizens gathered in Caracas, in the Plaza Bolívar, to sign for peace in Caracas. They say they are raising their voices against the U.S. intervention attempts. And the NGO Doctors of the World has warned against the geopolitical use of humanitarian aid. In a statement, the organization made a call for dialogue in the country to promote peace amid what the organization describes as a complex situation in Venezuela. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez has also addressed the matter. In a press conference in Havana, Rodriguez said that U.S. is preparing a military intervention under a humanitarian pretext.
The government of the United States has fabricated an imperialist coup from Washington with a president who was constructed in the northern capital, which hasn't functioned internally. You can cite numerous U.S. sources, accredited media outlets, which will provide all the details on the manner in which the coup is articulated. They are, even now, brutal. The pressure that the U.S. government has put against other countries, trying to force the recognition of a supposed self-proclaimed president who was named by Washington, or the call for new elections in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, annulling the ones which were legitimately and constitutionally held.
Colombian President Iván Duque continues to play a role in destabilizing Venezuela by leaving the door open for U.S. troops to use Colombian bases in the event of a military invasion. Let's see why.
President Iván Duque hasn't denied the possibility of allowing the deployment of U.S. troops in Colombia should the U.S. choose to invade Venezuela.
I think the country and the international community has to be clear. The Colombian president is supporting a U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, and he's willing to facilitate that. He's accountable to the people, and they don't have to stand for him, prioritizing his own interests over the Constitution.
According to the secretary of the Colombian Communist Party, the government is unaware of the history that binds the two nations and their tradition of resolving conflict through dialogue.
What they're doing is a provocation. The government wants to host a concert in support of humanitarian intervention. We want to send a message to the artists considering performing. You should not support coup d'etat imposed by foreign country. There shouldn't be concerts in the name of U.S. imperialism in our country.
A debate on Venezuela is due to take place in Congress in the next few days.
They are going to demand that the Foreign Affairs Minister confirms whether there are military planes on our bases.
All this at a time when Colombia is facing its own issues, such as the killings of social leaders.
We think the serious cases such as the killing of social leaders and human rights defenders that have claimed more than 480 lives are more important things for the president to worry about than the political situation of a foreign country.
At the debate in Congress, the government is expected to justify its foreign policy in Venezuela.
Now to Palestine, where at least 39 people have been injured by Israeli fire during a protest in the Gaza Strip. The injured were transferred to a nearby hospital, and at the same time around 50 fishing boats took part of a demonstration called Freedom Ship 24 in the Gaza port. The United Nations has said that hundreds of people are currently suffering from poverty and food insecurity in the Gaza Strip. According to the report, the Israeli blockade is the main cause of the situation. The blockade prevents citizens in the Strip to enjoy their basic rights, such as access to food, healthcare, and education. The blockade, that has lasted for 12 years, violates international law. In South Africa, the double Olympic gold medalist Caster Semenya appeared in the Court of Arbitration for Sports on Monday to challenge proposed rules that could force her to lower her testosterone level. Our correspondent Matuba Matlaji explains her case.
The support for South Africa's golden girl reached from her hometown of Limpopo up to the highest level of government when her gender was questioned.
They can write what they like. This is our little girl. And nothing is going to dampen her spirits and the spirits of South Africa.
We wish to register our displeasure at the manner in which Ms. Semenya has been treated.
Even after President Jacob Zuma's presidency, government positions haven't changed. The IAAF is still seen as the enemy of progress of an African child. Some commentators have even pulled the race card, saying if Caster wasn't black, she wouldn't be facing the humiliation she's been subjected to. This week, Caster Semenya released a list of experts she will call in her appeal hearing at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. She continues her fight against regulations aimed at lowering the testosterone levels of hyperandrogenic athletes like her. IAAF President Sebastian Coe tried to justify the process. He told reporters that the regulations are aimed at leveling the field between hyperandrogenic athletes and those with what he termed normal levels of testosterone. But one thing is certain, Caster Semenya is not going down without a fight. Matuba Matlaji, Telesur, Pretoria.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Hundreds of women in Argentina have gathered outside Congress to protest for abortion rights. Wearing their emblematic green handkerchiefs, women urge politicians to promote new legislation to legalize abortion. At least 350,000 clandestine abortions are performed in Argentina every year. This number could be higher, according to different organizations.
Whether illegal or legal, girls abort the same. Then we need a legalization. We need a containment on the part of the state because it really is a reality, and we are dying. They are killing us, and the state is responsible for all the deaths by unsafe abortion. And unfortunately, we have to be here because we are not taken into account.
We are still here, fighting and resisting, because within that Congress there are people who don't know anything about what women go through in the most humble neighborhoods, because there is another way to access abortion. It does not have to be done like that. Abortion has to be legal at the hospitals, so that no woman dies because of illegal and safe abortion in very poor conditions.
Calm is slowly returning to the streets of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, following just over a week of protests that left at least 7 people dead. We have the details in this report.
These schools' doors remain closed. There have been nearly 2 weeks of demonstrations. Thousands of Haitians taking to the streets to demand the ousting of President Jovenel Moïse. And while today saw no protests, the schools are still closed.
Kids are still at home. This is troublesome. I have 4 kids sitting at home doing nothing. I want them in school.
While the government has called for a return to normality, parents still feel the streets are not safe.
When you go out on the streets, you're taking a risk. You could be attacked or end up in the hospital. I'm saying this now because you asked me, but I don't know if speaking out is worth it anymore. In Haiti, nobody cares about what we have to say.
It's been the people who have been taking to the streets. 80% of the population lives in extreme poverty. There's a lot of distrust in the government, which continues to ask for calm.
This is an extremely tough situation. The government has shown no discipline when it comes to public spending.
While some banks and markets have started to operate again, the road to peace is still long.
Citizens must be the ones to help things return to normal, and it will be a slow process. The government lacks credibility, so anything they say has little meaning.
There is a lack of credibility because the government has failed to provide access to education to 50% of Haitian children. While the country is slowly recovering from the violence that took place these past few days, the causes that led to those protests remain unchanged.
Pablo Pérez García, Telesur, Haiti.
Cubans are set to vote on a referendum on Sunday to amend the island's constitution. Our correspondent in Cuba, Luis Autier, has the details.
Yes, good afternoon. Indeed, the National Electoral Commission offered a press conference this morning to show some results of the dynamic test that took place last Sunday. As a result of this, now we know that we have over 24,000 polling colleges in Cuba, but also over 1,000 polling colleges abroad, so the Cuban who lives in other countries can go and vote that important day. But also there are over 400,000 people working in this referendum in the colleges, counting votes, everything. So it's a big number of people working for the referendum. But not everything are good news. According to the Commission, 2.52% of the colleges presented some kind of problems regarding to transportation, communications, personnel, so that's why all the provinces will have to give part to the Commission next Wednesday to say the problems they found, and a day after that they will have a teleconference explaining what they did to fix those problems. This is pretty much what we have now in that matter. We'll be back with more. Back to you.
Thank you, Luis. That was Luis Autier from Cuba. And the economic changes of recent years in Cuba are one of the reasons why the island is seeking this constitutional reform. Let's look at one of the most controversial issues that will be put to referendum on Sunday.
The La Moneda Cubana restaurant in the very center of old Havana welcomes tourists from all over the world to enjoy authentic traditional Cuban food. The Constitution, which has been up for debate, explicitly recognizes the existence of private property, of which businesses like this are an example.
I think that it is important to recognize the private sector, but also public investment, because no one knows better what our country needs than its own citizens. I also think the productive forces must be liberated to reduce the prices of the raw material we need. They should also open up wholesale markets.
Private businesses, like the Moneda restaurant, promote social projects like this one, where adolescents and young people who haven't been able to work or study attend workshops on cooking, brewing, and culture. The restaurants become places where they can learn and where they can work when they graduate.
I think that it was achieved thanks to the joint efforts of the state and the private sector. I think the leaders of this country are working to create a more balanced and fair society. We mustn't divide different groups. We are all Cubans, and we must all work for a prosperous country. That's what this constitution is aiming for.
For this economic researcher, one of the greatest achievements of this draft constitution is not to demonize private property. However, he thinks they need to work more on a balanced relation between the private and public sectors, so as not to lose the focus on people's welfare.
Cuban socialism started with the state managing the economy, and that didn't work for smaller businesses like barbers or carpenters. That's why I think that we must innovate with these links between private and public sectors. Of course, the end result must be more to benefit everyone.
The recognition of private property in the new constitution has triggered a huge debate among Cubans. For example, on how to control the accumulation of property. For many people, the most important thing is not to give up on building socialism, while understanding that to distribute wealth, it must first be created.
Jamaica's Prime Minister says negotiations for the purchase of Venezuela's 49% shareholding in Petrojam have not achieved the desired outcome. Prime Minister Andrew Holness made the announcement in the parliament as he opened the debate on the bill for the purchase of the oil refinery shares. Holness says so far no settlement price has been agreed upon with the government of President Nicolás Maduro. Lawmakers in Brazil will head to Congress on Wednesday to debate the pension reform plan proposed by President Jair Bolsonaro. The president seeks to set the minimum retirement age at 62 for women and 65 for men. As it stands, retirement age is determined by the number of years one works and contributes to the pension system. For example, if pensions have been made, the contributions have been made for at least 35 years, they can retire at any age. Now, workers are opposed to changes to this existing plan.
They want men to retire at 65 and women at 62, when in the Congress, deputies retire after only 2 mandates. That's after 8 years, so it's us, the people, that are paying.
I have already worked 30 years, but I haven't reached the minimum age the government is planning. I'm going to try and retire now because I fear that with this reform, I'll have to work for at least 12 more years.
One of Mexico's most prominent journalists almost lost everything after reporting on misuse of funds that linked former President Enrique Peña Nieto to a multi-million-dollar mansion. The Spur spoke to her on an exclusive interview.
Buenos días a México, buenos días a quienes están aquí.
4 months ago, journalist Carmen Aristegui was allowed to return to commercial radio following a ban. She was censored by the state for exposing former President Enrique Peña Nieto's multi-million-dollar home.
My investigation and other circumstances related to my work led to censorship. I reported on the former president owning a multi-million-dollar property that wasn't under his name. It was under the name of a real estate agency owned by a contractor who had worked with Peña Nieto when he was a governor and made a fortune.
Aristegui fought numerous legal battles for almost 4 years.
I have been a victim of the law. There are still a number of cases against me, but I'm fighting such arbitrary actions.
The Supreme Court of Justice ruled Aristegui's dismissal as illegal. After firing her, the MBS radio group received an increase of 130% in government subsidies.
The radio group received 6 billion pesos.
Respected journalists have questioned the use of public funds to silence Aristegui.
Carmen has always placed ethics first, and it almost cost her everything.
If a well-known journalist, who is so respected for being credible, can be suspended for doing her job, what can the rest of us expect?
In the meantime, the case of MVS against Aristegui will become a landmark case against state censorship in a country where public funds have been used to influence editorial policies, and where being a journalist is becoming increasingly dangerous.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. India has rejected Pakistan's offer to investigate a bombing attack in Kashmir that left at least 40 Indian soldiers dead. India's defense minister demanded, quote, credible and visible action from its neighbor. On his side, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan also asked India to give, quote, actionable evidence that the attack was backed by Pakistan's intelligence services. Since the attack, the Indian government has already withdrawn trade privileges for Pakistan and halted some cross-border services, among other measures.
And we have been giving the Mumbai attackers have been given a due process and then punished too. But in Pakistan, not even the first court has been completing its job. So you may ask, Pakistan can ask us for evidence, and we have been giving evidence, but there's nothing to show for Pakistan, nothing for Pakistan to show that they've taken action on the evidences provided earlier on the earlier attacks.
A Nigerian governor says gunmen killed over 130 villagers last week in the northwest, more than double the death toll initially reported. The governor of Kaduna State was criticized for announcing the deaths just ahead of elections, which were ultimately postponed. The bodies were found in 8 villages in an area known for ethnic and religious tensions.
And now, what we are hearing, the last report we got, is that over 130 people were killed, not even 66.
The European Union has signed a sustainable partnership agreement with Morocco, but many are criticizing the deal, saying this also includes the non-sovereign governing territory of Western Sahara. Our South African correspondent Matuba Matlaji has the details.
Western Sahara's determination is yet under scrutiny, and this is after the conclusion of a sustainable fisheries partnership agreement between European Union and the Kingdom of Morocco. So there are concerns now that the EU's trade agreements with Morocco may violate international law. It's in the way that they relate to Western Sahara. And we all know that the European Court of Justice ruled that trade agreements between the EU and Morocco have no legal basis to include the Western Sahara, which is a non-self-governing territory over which Morocco has no recognized sovereignty. The court also emphasized that trade agreements with Morocco, if they are to in any way bind Western Sahara, require obtaining the consent of its people. Then the EU hasn't been clear on the kind of consultations it conducted before this deal was sealed and signed. And now this is likely to be interpreted as theft by nations who support self-determination of West Sahara. Morocco has been at odds with allies over the West Sahara issue. Algeria and South Africa are among those countries that express their own views on how the matter should be dealt with. While tensions remain between Algeria and Morocco, South Africa has decided to restore diplomatic relations with the kingdom. But it remains to be seen now how the EU's so-called trade deal with the Kingdom of Morocco will be met with any resistance. It's back to you, studio.
That was Matuba Matalaji from Pretoria. And South Korea has offered to begin economic talks with North Korea in a bid to speed up the denuclearization. President Moon Jae-in made this offer just ahead of a new summit between North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump in Vietnam at the end of February. The South Korean president said he's willing to offer a variety of concessions, from reconnecting rail and road links to creating an inter-Korean economic cooperation.
The president told President Donald Trump to make use of South Korea's role to encourage North Korea's denuclearization. He also said that South Korea is ready to undertake anything, from reconnecting rail and road links between the two Koreas to other inter-Korean economic cooperation.
But Trump has said he is in no rush to press North Korea to end its nuclear program. The president told reporters that he wants denuclearization, but as North Korea has not conducted nuclear testings recently, there's no need for a hurry.
I have no pressing time.
You referred earlier to your meetings in Vietnam. What do you want to achieve during that summit?
Well, I'd just like to see ultimately denuclearization of North Korea. I think we will see that ultimately. I have no pressing time schedule, and I think a lot of people would like to see it go very quickly from the other side. I really believe that North Korea can be a tremendous economic power when this is solved. Their location between Russia, China, and South Korea is unbelievable.
With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories from our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're on social media as well, so go ahead and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and also Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.